Welcome to Crushed Husband. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. I had just finished a long session in the flight simulator when I walked into the house, expecting the usual quiet evening. It was a little after 6, and Clara was already in the kitchen, humming along to some song on the radio, a bit too cheerfully for my taste. "Hey Mark," she called, her voice almost too bright. "I've got the best idea." I raised an eyebrow as I tossed my bag onto the couch. Clara had that look on her face, the one that always seemed to precede one of her wild, over-the-top plans. It had been happening more often lately, and I had started to notice it. The enthusiasm was always there, but it didn't always feel genuine. Something about the way she spoke, the way she grinned a little too widely, made me cautious. "What's the plan this time?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. She turned, beaming. "A family sailing trip to a remote bay, just the 3 of us. Doesn't it sound perfect? We can disconnect, relax, really bond." I stared at her, trying to read her face. I had spent years as a pilot, scanning for threats, picking up on even the tiniest signs of trouble in the air. And right now, every alarm in my head was going off. Her enthusiasm was too rehearsed. The excitement in her voice didn't match the tension in her eyes. I could feel my instincts flaring. Something was off. Clara was already rifling through her bag, pulling out some brochures with pictures of pristine beaches and glistening water. The kind of place you only see on vacation ads. "I found this perfect spot," she continued. "It's a hidden gem. So exclusive, I was thinking, we could leave this weekend?" I crossed my arms. "Weekend? It's Thursday." I know, but it's all set up. We can leave Saturday, stay for a few days, really make it special." She paused, looking up at me with that hopeful look she knew I couldn't resist. But I wasn't buying it. Not this time. "Clara," I said slowly, trying to keep the suspicion from creeping into my voice. "I've been flying for weeks, and I come back to this big surprise trip. Why the rush?" She waved me off, her smile never faltering. "It's just that, with your schedule, I figured we could seize the opportunity. I've been planning it for a while, you know? It'll be perfect for Evan, too. He'll love it." I glanced over at Evan, who was sitting at the table, flipping through his latest collection of seashells. He was always fascinated by marine life. "Yeah, he'll love it. But Clara, why the big push for this particular trip? Why a hidden spot?" Her expression faltered for a brief second, but she recovered quickly. "I found it through some online sailing groups. We'll have total privacy, no distractions." She grabbed a pile of brochures, pulling them toward me like they were the evidence I needed to see. I even bought special gear, survival kits, anti-sea lice spray, top-notch stuff. I blinked. "Anti-sea lice spray?" She nodded, her tone convincing. "It's the best on the market. You won't have to worry about anything." Her urgency made the hairs on my neck stand up. The gear, the spray, the secrecy. It was too much. Something wasn't right. I leaned in, my voice dropping a little lower. "Clara, this is all a little much, don't you think? You've been acting, I don't know, different lately. I'm not sure I trust this." She stopped, her smile tightening. "What do you mean different?" "I mean, you've been so excited about it, but why? What's really going on?" I pushed. "I'm not saying no to a family trip, but this feels staged, like you're hiding something." There was a brief moment of silence. I watched her face carefully, waiting for the next move. Then she sighed, her shoulders slumping just slightly. "It's just a trip, Mark. Please don't overthink it. It'll be good for us, for you." I wasn't convinced, but for Evan's sake, I pushed the doubts down. "Fine, but I want to know everything. I don't like surprises, Clara. Not like this." She smiled again, this time with a little more relief. "Of course, I'll explain everything when we're out there. You'll see, it's perfect." She glanced over at Evan, who was now holding up a crab shell like it was some treasure. "It'll be a great adventure for all of us." I wasn't sure, but I nodded anyway, making a mental note to keep an eye out. Something in my gut told me I had to. There was no way this was just a spontaneous trip. It was too perfect, too controlled. Something told me I was about to be in the middle of something bigger than a family vacation. But for now, I had to pretend to believe her. For Evan's sake. "All right, we'll go. But I'm going to need to know exactly what we're getting into." She shot me a bright smile, but I couldn't shake the feeling that her perfect trip was going to be anything but perfect. I just hoped I wouldn't regret agreeing to it. Saturday morning arrived faster than I expected. I hadn't slept much, my mind racing with thoughts of Clara's sudden enthusiasm and the strange details surrounding this perfect family trip. But I pushed those thoughts aside, at least for now. It was supposed to be a time for us to unwind, and I wanted to make sure Evan had a good time. He was practically bouncing with excitement as we packed up the car. Clara, of course, was already in full vacation mode, more energized than I had ever seen her. She was darting around the house, checking last-minute lists, double-checking the survival kits she had ordered. "Don't forget to pack your jackets," she called to Evan as he hurried to shove his favorite sea creature book into his bag. "And sunscreen, a lot of it." I nodded, trying to match her energy. "You got it," I muttered, still trying to shake the feeling in my stomach that something wasn't quite right. As we loaded up the car, Clara insisted we take 2 separate vehicles to the marina. I didn't question her at first. Maybe it was just to avoid cramming everything into one car. But when she mentioned an errand she needed to run at her yoga studio, afterward, it raised another red flag. "You're going to be at the marina while I'm finishing up," Clara explained, waving her hand dismissively as she loaded some final bags into her car. "It won't take long. You guys can get a head start." I didn't like the idea, but I wasn't about to argue. "All right, Clara, just make sure we don't miss the boat," I said, trying to sound casual. She gave me that forced smile again. "You'll be fine," she said, tossing her keys in the air before getting into her car. "I'll meet you there, I promise." As she drove off, I felt a prickling unease in my gut. It didn't make sense. Why 2 cars? Why the rush? Something about her tone made me feel like she was trying to distance herself from us, like she had some hidden agenda I wasn't a part of. Evan didn't notice. He was too busy looking out the window, excited about the adventure. "Dad, we're going to see all kinds of sea creatures, right?" he asked eagerly. I smiled at him, pushing my doubts aside for a moment. "That's the plan, buddy. We're going to find some really cool stuff." We drove along the coast, the road growing more desolate the further we went. The landscape was breathtaking, rocky cliffs, rolling waves, and the smell of salt in the air. But there was something unsettling about the emptiness of the roads. I hadn't seen a single car for miles. "Are we almost there?" Evan asked, looking out the window. The excitement in his voice made it hard for me to keep the knot in my stomach from tightening. "We should be," I said, my gaze flicking to the GPS. "The marina's right around the corner." But as we turned off the main road and onto a narrow, winding path, I began to notice something odd. The area seemed more and more isolated. No signs of life, no other boats or docks, just empty land stretching out in every direction. We passed a warning sign as we turned toward the dock. Restricted waters, permit holders only. I glanced at the sign, my brow furrowing. That didn't seem right. I had been to a lot of marinas in my time, but restricted waters? I had never heard of such a thing. As I slowed the car, I called Clara. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I tried again, no answer. "This doesn't feel right," I muttered to myself, but I kept driving, unable to shake the thought that I was being led into some sort of trap. We pulled up to a small private dock with a decrepit office on the side, half hidden by overgrown grass. There were a few boats docked, but no one in sight. It felt like we had arrived at a forgotten corner of the world, cut off from everything. Evan, oblivious to my growing concern, bounced in his seat, eager to see the boat. "Dad, let's go." "I can't wait," I forced a smile. "Sure, buddy, let's get your gear." As we unloaded, I glanced around again, trying to shake the sense that we were trespassing on someone else's private space. The marina didn't look like the kind of place tourists would come to. It looked abandoned, like no one had cared for it in years. When Clara's car finally appeared around the corner, my heart sank. She pulled up without so much as a glance at the surroundings, parking as if everything were perfectly normal. Her face looked pale, her smile tight, but she said nothing as she got out. "Well, we're here," she said quickly, walking toward the boat with an air of forced cheerfulness. "Let's get this show on the road." I hesitated for a moment, watching her. There was something about the way she was moving, like she was trying to get through this as fast as possible, without drawing attention. "Clara," I said, finally stepping toward her. "This doesn't feel right. There's no one here, and this whole place, this exclusive marina, it doesn't sit well with me." She stopped, her hand tightening on the handle of the boat. Her eyes flicked to mine, a brief flash of something I couldn't read. Then she shook her head, smiling tightly. "Mark, relax. This is the spot. Trust me." I stared at her, my mind racing. The warning signs were everywhere now. This wasn't just a family trip, it felt like something much bigger. But for Evan's sake, I swallowed my doubts. "All right," I said, forcing a smile. "Let's get the boat ready." As Clara began unpacking the gear, I couldn't shake the feeling that this trip wasn't just about family bonding. Something was going on, and I was starting to realize I might be the only one who saw it. Still, I followed her onto the boat, Evan already jumping around with excitement, eager to begin his adventure. As we sailed further out into the bay, the shore began to disappear behind us, and I couldn't help but feel like we were heading deeper into a place where I wasn't supposed to be. The boat was rocking gently on the water as Clara steered, her hands steady on the wheel. Evan was practically bouncing in excitement as he leaned over the side, watching the water below, hoping to spot some marine life. He had always been fascinated by the ocean, collecting shells and tiny creatures like they were treasures, and I couldn't help but smile at his enthusiasm. At least one of us was excited, but something still gnawed at me. The further we sailed, the more isolated we became. There were no other boats, no visible signs of life on the horizon, just the endless blue of the ocean stretching out before us, quiet and unnervingly still. "So," I started, trying to keep my tone casual, "how exactly did you find this place?" Clara glanced over at me, her smile a little too wide. "Oh, I did some research. I'm in a few sailing groups online, and this bay was mentioned as a hidden gem. Great for those looking for peace and quiet, away from the crowds." I nodded, but something about her response didn't sit right. I'd spent enough time around pilots and mechanics to know when someone was glossing over the details. Her eyes darted away from me as she spoke, and her voice wavered slightly. I didn't like it. Evan, oblivious to the tension, pointed excitedly to the water. "Look, Dad, there's a school of fish, and I saw something shiny." I looked over, pretending to share in his enthusiasm, but my eyes were scanning the water now. The sea was unusually clear, almost too clear. I could see straight down, far deeper than I would expect at this point in the bay. That wasn't natural, at least not in my experience. It felt off. "Yeah, hey Clara," I said, keeping my voice low so Evan wouldn't hear. "I'm not seeing any boats or even signs of life around here. You sure this place is okay?" She flashed me a quick smile, the kind she used when she was trying to deflect. "It's perfect, Mark. Just trust me. We're going to have the best time." I wasn't convinced, but I didn't press further. Instead, I watched Evan, who had now jumped to his feet, holding a net as he peered over the side, his eyes alight with excitement. "This place really is amazing," I said, trying to focus on Evan, hoping I wasn't overthinking it. Clara nodded, but she was still steering the boat in a way that seemed deliberate. Her hands never left the wheel, and she was almost too focused, her eyes scanning the horizon, avoiding mine. There was an edge to her calm demeanor, one I couldn't quite place. We sailed for what felt like hours, the sun high above us, and the water turned an even deeper shade of blue as we ventured further into the bay. The silence was unsettling now. No birds, no distant hum of motorboats, just the occasional splash of water as we cut through the waves. It felt like we were completely alone, isolated in a place that didn't feel like it should exist. As we approached a small cove, Clara slowed the boat. She cut the engine, and the sudden quiet that followed was almost deafening. "What's this?" I asked, unable to hide the suspicion in my voice. She glanced at me, her smile forced. "I thought we could anchor here. I've been reading about some rare species in this area, lots of unique marine life. Evan's going to love it." Evan, oblivious to the tension between us, leaned over the edge of the boat, his eyes wide as he spotted something in the water. "What's that?" he asked, pointing to a flash of silver beneath the surface. I squinted, trying to get a better look. It wasn't a fish. Whatever it was, it had an unnatural metallic sheen to it, something I couldn't quite explain. "I'm not sure, Bud," I said, my voice low. "Stay back from the edge, all right?" Clara's eyes flickered toward me, a brief look of annoyance flashing across her face before she masked it with a smile. "It's fine, Mark. Don't worry about it." I wasn't sure who she was trying to convince, me or herself. But Evan was already pulling out his shell collection kit, eager to get a closer look at whatever was swimming below us. He was so absorbed in the idea of discovering something new, he didn't notice the odd tension in the air, or the way Clara's eyes darted nervously toward the shore. I turned back to Clara, my suspicion growing. Clara, I said, trying to keep my voice even. What's going on here? This isn't just a random family vacation, is it? There's something you're not telling me. She stiffened, her shoulders tightening as she reached for the boat's anchor. I told you, Mark, it's just a trip, nothing more. Just trust me. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep pretending that everything was fine. Clara had been hiding something from me for days, and now I was starting to see it. Whatever this place was, it wasn't just for family bonding. It wasn't just about rare marine life. Evan was still leaning over the boat, trying to get a closer look at the strange metallic shimmer in the water. I couldn't help but notice that Clara had stopped looking at him, her attention fixed on something else. Her eyes were no longer focused on Evan, but on the water. It was like she was waiting for something. Suddenly I felt it, a chill running down my spine, as I realized just how much I had missed. I looked over the side again, my gaze snapping back to the spot where Evan had pointed. What was in the water? And why did Clara look so guilty? Before I could voice my concern, Evan shouted, "I see something! It's moving!" I reached for him, pulling him back from the edge, my heart racing. "Evan, don't..." But it was too late. The water began to bubble, and something massive and dark rose from beneath the surface, splashing up with a violent force that nearly tipped the boat. It was like a shadow had materialized from the depths. Clara's face turned pale as she grabbed the wheel, her hand shaking. "Mark, get him back inside the boat, now." But I didn't need her to tell me that. The air around us felt heavy, oppressive, and I knew something was terribly wrong. Evan was staring at the water, his eyes wide with awe and fear. "What is that?" he whispered, voice trembling. And then I saw it too, something massive, glistening and unnatural, moving just beneath the surface. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned to Clara, who was desperately trying to restart the engine. But it wasn't the boat that was the problem. It was what was waiting just beneath the water. Something told me this trip was never about a family vacation. Something told me we were in far deeper than I could have ever imagined. "Clara, what the hell is that?" I demanded, my voice thick with fear. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Because as the boat lurched forward, I knew we weren't just stranded on some peaceful bay. We were part of something else now. Something bigger, darker, and far more dangerous than I could have ever guessed. And we were trapped in the middle of it. The water splashed violently against the boat as Clara slammed the engine into gear, trying to pull us away from the strange, writhing shape beneath the surface. Evan was gripping the edge of the boat, eyes wide with terror, too shocked to speak. "Clara!" I shouted, my voice thick with urgency. "What the hell is going on?" She was shaking now, her knuckles white as she clutched the wheel, her face pale and strained. We have to get out of here," she said, her voice trembling. "I should have never brought you here." The boat lurched again as I glanced back at the water. The shape, whatever it was, had disappeared beneath the surface, but I could still feel its presence, lingering just below. It felt like the ocean was alive, watching us. "Clara, what was that? What the hell was in the water?" I demanded again, my heart pounding in my chest. She didn't answer. Instead, she was muttering to herself, too frantic to listen. Her eyes darted around, scanning the water, as though she was expecting something to emerge at any moment. "Mark, just calm down. I'll explain everything, just not right now." Clara's voice cracked as she sped the boat forward, the engine roaring in protest. But it was too late. A sharp, searing pain shot through my arm, and I yelped in shock. I jerked back, trying to pull my arm away, but something was holding me. Something was biting into my skin. "Ow!" I screamed, my voice high with panic. "What the hell? Something's biting me." I looked down to see my arm covered in what I thought were just a few scratches. But then I saw the welts, small, swollen bumps, darkening in color, spreading along the skin where the water had splashed. Clara looked at me, her face draining of color as I clutched my arm. "No, no, no, no," she muttered, her hand reaching toward a bag near the front of the boat. "The spray, where is it? I packed it." The pain intensified in waves, and I looked down, horrified to see the small bites swelling rapidly, reddening. "What the hell is happening, Clara?" I demanded, my voice thick with dread. "Mark," she whispered, her voice tight. Those are from the marine parasites, the ones I told you about, the ones I said were dangerous." "What do you mean?" I was trying to stay calm, but it was getting harder by the second. I could feel my breathing growing shallow as the venom spread through my body. My head was starting to spin, my skin crawling with an unfamiliar heat. Why didn't you tell me? Why the hell didn't you warn me? She was fumbling with a small bottle, desperately spraying something onto the bites. The liquid did nothing. The swelling worsened. I thought it was just going to be a precaution, Clara cried, the panic clear in her voice. I didn't think it would happen to us. You didn't think? I choked out, my voice barely a whisper as I felt my chest tighten. Clara, this feels like poison. Evan, who had been quiet up until now, started to tug at Clara's arm. Mom, Dad's really hurt, he said, his voice rising with fear. I could barely keep myself upright now. My body felt like it was on fire. I glanced at Evan. His face was pale, and his eyes wide with fear. He was starting to scratch at his own arms, and I saw the first welts beginning to form on his skin. Clara! No! Don't just sit there! Do something! I shouted, my voice now hoarse with panic. My pulse was racing, the skin on my arms beginning to burn like fire. I felt dizzy, my head spinning as if the world around me was spinning faster than I could keep up with. Clara snapped out of her frantic daze. She grabbed the first aid kit from under the seat and started frantically tearing through it. I'm sorry, Mark. I didn't know it would be this bad. I didn't know it would affect us like this. Evan was crying now, his small hands clutching his arms as the bites on his skin grew larger, more pronounced. His breathing was shallow, quick. Mom, it hurts, he whimpered, looking at Clara with wide, tearful eyes. Why does it hurt? I could barely speak. The venom from the bites seemed to be spreading, dulling my senses, leaving me disoriented. My body felt sluggish, like I was sinking, drowning, suffocating in the heat that was radiating from my skin. Clara, still frantic, turned back to me, her eyes wide with fear. I didn't know. The spray was supposed to prevent it, but she stopped, realizing that it was already too late. We need to get to the shore. We need to get medical help. I can't fix this out here. But the shore was too far. The boat was still rocking on the water, the waves crashing against it as Clara tried desperately to start the engine again. I can't get it started, she whispered, eyes darting to the control panel, her hands shaking. We're stuck out here, and She broke off, staring at me, her expression filled with horror. Evan was clutching his arms tighter now, the fear in his voice palpable. Mom? Why is he getting worse? Clara didn't answer. She just kept fumbling with the boat's controls, desperation in her eyes as she looked back at the swelling, angry welts on my skin. The fear was spreading like wildfire between the three of us now, as the bites worsened. The air felt thick, stifling. I could barely breathe. Clara, we need to go, I forced out, my voice barely a whisper. We need to get help. Now I don't know how much longer I can hold on. But there was no response, no answer. She didn't know how to fix this. And we were still out there, floating in the middle of nowhere, with no way to get to safety. I closed my eyes as the pain coursed through me, my body shaking, and I could barely hear Clara's frantic words through the roaring in my ears. It felt like I was sinking, deep underwater, with no one able to pull me up. And that's when I realized we weren't just in danger of the parasites. We were trapped out here, and Clara had known more than she let on. The world felt like it was spinning. My head was clouded, my skin was burning, and my chest tightened with every breath. The venom from the bites was coursing through me, and I could feel my body slowly giving out. I was trying to stay conscious, but it was becoming harder and harder to focus on anything except the growing pain and the suffocating heat that had taken over my body. Clara was still frantically trying to restart the boat, but nothing was working. The engine sputtered, but it wouldn't turn over. My vision blurred, and I could barely make out her voice calling my name. Mark, please, hang on. We need to get you to a hospital. Her voice was shaking, her desperation clear, but it felt so distant to me, as if I was hearing her from underwater. I barely registered Evan's frantic cries, his tiny hands tugging at Clara, begging her to do something. Mom, Dad's not okay. What's happening to him? But Clara couldn't answer him. She was too focused on trying to fix the boat. I saw her hands shaking, tears pooling in her eyes, and for the first time since we had set out, I realized how scared she truly was. Clara, I rasped, my throat dry and tight. "Get us to shore. Please, get Evan. Out of here. Now." She looked at me, her eyes wide with fear, and then at Evan, who was still clutching his arms, tears streaming down his face. But there was no way we were getting anywhere. We were stranded in the middle of nowhere, with no cell service and no way to get help. "I can't," Clara whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't. It's not working. The engine won't start. I'm so sorry, Mark. I should have told you." "What are you talking about?" I asked, forcing the words out through the pain. "Clara, what did you do? What's happening?" Her hands trembled as she clutched the wheel, staring at it helplessly, as though willing it to start. She took a deep breath, wiping away the tears that had started to fall. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she answered, I knew about the parasites. I knew they were dangerous, but I thought we'd be fine. I thought it was just a precaution, but I didn't realize how bad it could get. I didn't think it would be like this." The words hit me like a ton of bricks, and my body tensed in shock. "You knew?" My voice shook with disbelief. "You knew this was going to happen? Clara, why the hell didn't you tell me?" "I didn't know it would happen this fast," she cried, looking at me with panic in her eyes. "I thought we had time. I thought the spray would be enough. I didn't think it would hurt you, or Evan. I never thought this would happen." I felt a cold rage building inside me, but it was drowned out by the pain, the burning in my veins, and the dizziness threatening to pull me under. I wanted to scream at her, to yell about how everything had gone wrong, how she had led us into this mess, but all I could do was lay there, helpless. "This place, it's the end for us, isn't it?" I whispered, my voice hoarse, barely audible. "You got us into this, and now we're going to die out here." "No," she whispered urgently, her voice shaking. "Number, we're not going to die. I'll get help, I promise. I just need to. But she was losing it too. The control was slipping away from her, and I could see it. I could feel it. "Clara," I said, my voice weak. "You don't have the answers, do you? You never had the answers." Her eyes flickered with guilt and regret. She opened her mouth to say something, but was interrupted by a strange, low hum from behind us. The sound was faint at first, barely audible, but as it grew louder, I realized what it was. Another boat. I could hear the engine, the sound of it cutting through the water, approaching us. "Help!" I managed to croak. "Please, help!" Clara's head snapped up, her eyes searching the horizon. And then finally, through the haze of my vision, I saw it. A small boat, coming toward us, moving faster than I could have ever hoped. "Clara, look," I said, my voice rising with what little strength I had left. "Someone's coming." The boat drew closer, and I could make out the figure at the helm. It was a man dressed in a dark uniform, with a serious expression as he looked ahead, steering toward us. "Thank God," Clara whispered, her voice trembling with relief. She turned to me, her face full of gratitude, but I didn't feel the same relief. Not yet. The boat pulled up beside ours, and the man called out, "You folks okay?" "We've been monitoring the area for unusual activity. We heard your distress signal." Clara jumped up, her hands waving frantically. Yes, we're in trouble. We need help. My husband, my son, they've been bitten by these parasites. They're poisoning us. We need medical help now." The man's eyes flickered to me, assessing the situation in an instant. "You're both in pretty bad shape. We need to get you to the mainland. Fast. Hold on." I barely heard him as he threw a rope, tying our boats together. The pain was overwhelming, and I could feel my body shutting down. But I couldn't let go of hope. Not yet. "Dad!" Evan cried from the corner of the boat, his voice desperate and terrified. "Dad, are we going to be okay?" I managed to turn my head, offering him a faint smile. "We'll be okay, kiddo. We're going to get through this." But as the stranger hauled me aboard his boat, my mind went black, and everything faded away. I didn't know if I would wake up in time, but if I did, I would make sure Clara couldn't hide from what she had done. The sound of the boat's engine was a distant hum as I slowly drifted in and out of consciousness. My head was throbbing, and my entire body felt like it was on fire. The swelling on my skin had only gotten worse, and every breath I took was labored, shallow, like I was drowning in the thick heat of it all. When I finally opened my eyes again, I was in a small, sterile room. the bright white lights overhead blinding for a moment. The smell of antiseptic hit me, making my stomach churn. I could hear the faint beeping of machines and the soft murmur of voices around me. I tried to move, but my body felt like it belonged to someone else, heavy, unresponsive. My limbs were weak, stiff, as if I hadn't used them in days. "Mark, can you hear me?" Clara's voice was soft, hesitant, like she was afraid of what I might say. I turned my head slowly, and there she was, sitting beside the bed, her face pale and tired, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. Her hand was resting gently on mine, but there was something about the way she looked at me, something that made me feel like she was waiting for something, like she wasn't sure if she wanted me to wake up at all. I swallowed, my throat raw. "What happened?" I croaked, barely able to find the words. The pain was still there, but now it was dull, lingering in the background as I tried to make sense of everything. "You were poisoned," Clara said softly, her voice trembling. "The parasites, they're venomous. They almost killed you, Mark." She paused, her breath catching. "And Evan, he's fine now. The doctors treated him too." I nodded slowly, the words sinking in. The venom had nearly killed me, and Evan had been affected too, but Clara's tone told me everything I needed to know. Evan was fine now. It was me she was worried about. I glanced around the room, my vision still fuzzy, and saw that we weren't alone. A doctor was standing by the door, watching us with quiet concern. He looked older, graying hair, but his expression was calm. Still, I could tell by the way he shifted his weight that he was waiting for the right moment to speak. "How long was I out?" I asked, trying to sit up, but the effort left me dizzy. Clara gently pressed me back into the bed. "A few days," she said quietly. "We had to get you to a hospital. It was touch and go for a while. The venom was spreading too fast. They didn't know if they'd be able to stop it in time." I glanced at her, my thoughts suddenly clearer, and something in my chest tightened. I remembered the moments before I passed out, the way Clara had looked, the way she had seemed so calm when everything around us was falling apart. The more I thought about it, the more I began to realize how much she had been hiding from me, how much she had lied. I tried to speak, but my voice was hoarse. "Clara, what did you do? Why didn't you tell me everything?" She blinked, her eyes filled with guilt, and I saw it then. Her eyes were hiding something. She wasn't just afraid for me. She was afraid of me, afraid of what I might find out. "Mark, please," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I never meant for this to happen. I didn't want you to get hurt." I felt the anger rising in my chest, hot and painful. I clenched my fists, the pressure in my chest threatening to explode. "Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Clara hesitated, glancing nervously at the doctor. The man seemed to take the hint, stepping back toward the door. "I need to step out for a moment," he said gently, his voice calm. "I'll be back shortly." As soon as the door clicked shut, I turned back to Clara, my gaze hard. "Tell me everything. Now." She took a deep breath, her hands trembling in her lap. I didn't know how to tell you, Mark. I really didn't. But I've been working with someone who deals in experimental marine repellents, bioengineering. The parasites weren't natural. They were created for testing, and Her voice trailed off, and she looked down at her hands. I stared at her in disbelief, my mind reeling. "You knew about this. You were part of it. All of it." Clara's face turned white. "I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't think it would affect you. I thought it would just be a few tests, Mark. A small, controlled experiment. I was getting paid to help with the research. I thought it was safe." "Safe?" I spat, my voice rising with fury. "You risked our son's life, and mine, for money? For some experiment?" "I didn't know," she shouted, her voice cracking. "I thought I was just helping with a few chemicals." I wasn't supposed to know about the marine life experiments, but then Ronan Gray, the man I was working with, he promised me it was all legal, all controlled. But when I found out about the parasites, it was too late. I was already in too deep. I took a deep breath, trying to keep myself together. The betrayal was suffocating, and the hurt was worse than the venom that had nearly killed me. "So you lured us here. You brought us to the bay, knowing it wasn't safe, knowing the danger. Why, Clara? Why? What else were you hiding?" Clara's eyes filled with tears, and she reached out for my hand, but I pulled it away before she could touch me. She flinched, but she didn't stop. "I'm sorry, Mark. I was desperate. Ronan promised me so much. Money, success, everything. I thought I could make it stop if it went wrong, but I never imagined it would get to this point. I didn't mean to hurt you. I swear I couldn't look at her anymore." I turned my head, staring at the sterile white walls of the room, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on me. The lies, the deception, the betrayal of everything I had trusted her with. "You put my family in danger," I said softly, the words heavy. "You lied to me, Clara. You lied to Evan." She began to sob, her hands shaking as she clutched the sheets. "I never wanted to hurt you. Please, Mark, don't leave me. I love you. I'll fix this. I swear I'll make it right." I wanted to say something, to yell, to scream, to demand answers. But the rage was gone now. What I felt was emptiness. She had betrayed me. She had betrayed our family. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said quietly. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore." The silence that followed was suffocating. The weight of everything I had just learned crushed me, and I could feel my world shifting, cracking under the strain. There was no going back from this. The truth was out, and everything had changed. And as I lay there, the sound of Clara's sobs echoing in the background, I realized that our lives would never be the same. Not after what she had done. The betrayal had shattered something inside me, and I wasn't sure if I would ever be able to put the pieces back together. The tension in the hospital room was unbearable. Clara was still trying to plead her case, her hands shaking as she wiped her tears away. But I couldn't hear her anymore. I couldn't listen to her excuses, her promises that she'd fix things, that she would make it right. She had already crossed a line, and the trust I once had in her was gone. It wasn't just the lies. It was the betrayal of everything I had ever believed in. I had to get out of there. I needed to think, to make sense of everything that had happened. But my body was still weak, the effects of the venom coursing through my veins. And every time I moved, my muscles screamed in protest. I felt like I was walking through fog, my mind clouded with disbelief. That's when the call came. It was Cal. "Mark, you need to listen to me," he said, his voice rough with urgency. "I know what's going on. I know what Clara's been hiding. You need to get to the shipyard. It's where Gray's operation is. Everything, all of it." "I don't know how much time you have." The shipyard, Ronan Gray. My stomach twisted at the mention of his name. Clara had mentioned him once, briefly in passing, but I had never thought much of it. Now everything was clicking into place. The secretive behavior, the urgency, the strange details of the trip. It wasn't just an accident. Clara had been working with Gray the entire time, and I had walked right into it. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I demanded, trying to sit up. My head spun, and I had to take a deep breath to steady myself. "I couldn't," Cal replied, his voice low. "But you need to know. Gray's been working on something bigger than just testing parasites. It's illegal. They've been using people, families, as part of his experiments. Mark, this is bigger than just Clara. He's been setting up a biowarfare operation." The weight of his words hit me like a punch to the gut. Biowarfare. The parasites, the secretive trips, the danger. It wasn't just about money. It was a twisted, deliberate plan to use people as guinea pigs. To weaponize marine life. I ran a hand through my hair, the reality of everything starting to crush me. Clara wasn't just guilty of being naive or desperate. She had been complicit in something horrifying, and I had unknowingly dragged my family into it. "I'm going," I said, my voice cold. "I need to stop this, Cal. Whatever it takes." "You're not alone," Cal said quickly. "I'll help you. I've already called in some favors. The feds are getting wind of it, but it's moving fast. You don't have much time. Get to the shipyard. It's the only way to shut this down." The line clicked dead, and I was left in silence, the weight of his words hanging in the air. I couldn't sit around anymore. I had to make it right. For Evan. For Clara. Even though she had lied to me, I couldn't ignore what had been done. I couldn't let her, or anyone else, get away with this. I forced myself out of the hospital bed, my legs shaky as I stood, trying to get my bearings. The doctor had warned me to stay put, but I couldn't. Clara had done enough damage. Now it was time for me to take control. Clara stood up, but she didn't approach me. She knew what was coming. She knew I was leaving, and no amount of pleading would stop me. "I have to fix this," I said, my voice low. "I have to stop him. I'm going to the shipyard. If you want to make things right, you'll help me. I'm not doing this alone." She hesitated, her face pale, but I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes. It wasn't enough to make me trust her again, but it was something. She nodded slowly, her hands wringing together nervously. "I'll help. I'll help you, Mark," she whispered. I didn't know it was this bad. I never imagined it would get so far. But I'll help you stop him. I swear I didn't know if I believed her, but I didn't have time to question it. Every second felt like a minute lost. The shipyard was just the beginning. Gray had to be stopped, and I was going to make sure that happened. We drove in silence, the miles slipping away as we headed toward the industrial area where Gray's operation was said to be hidden. The tension in the car was thick, and Clara kept glancing nervously at me, her hands twitching on her lap. I wanted to confront her, ask her what she had really known, why she had kept this secret from me. But there was no time. We didn't have time for anything except stopping Gray and whatever sick experiments he was carrying out. As we neared the shipyard, I could see the dark silhouette of the old warehouses rising in the distance, isolated on the edge of town. The place was like a ghost town, abandoned and forgotten by most. It was exactly the kind of place a man like Gray would hide in. We parked a few blocks away, out of sight. The area was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that made your skin crawl. As we walked toward the shipyard, I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to turn back, but there was no going back now. Clara hesitated beside me, her eyes darting around nervously. "Mark," she said quietly, "we're in too deep. Are you sure you want to do this?" I looked at her, my gaze hard. "We don't have a choice. If we don't stop him now, it's only going to get worse." I saw her swallow hard, then nod, her face pale. She wasn't just afraid of Gray or what we might find at the shipyard. She was afraid of what I might do when I found out everything, and I didn't care. We moved closer to the fence, ducking low, as we reached the entrance of the shipyard. Through a crack in the gate, I could see figures moving inside, shadowy figures that didn't look like workers. These weren't ordinary employees. They were armed. It wasn't just an operation, it was a war zone in the making. "I see them," I muttered. "We'll need to move fast." Clara nodded, her face grim. Just follow my lead, okay?" I didn't answer. I was already focused on the task at hand. With a deep breath, I stepped forward, the adrenaline kicking in. This was it. The moment everything changed. There would be no turning back from here. We were going in. The cold wind bit into my skin as Clara and I crouched near the edge of the shipyard, just behind a stack of shipping crates. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel the thrum of adrenaline in my veins. I had no idea what we were about to walk into, but I knew one thing for sure. Gray had to be stopped. Clara was beside me, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. I could see the beads of sweat on her forehead, despite the chill in the air. She looked like she was about to speak, but I shook my head, signaling for silence. We didn't have time for explanations. "Where do we go?" I whispered, trying to keep my voice as steady as possible. "How do we get in?" Clara glanced around the corner of the crates and pointed to a rusted metal door at the far end of the yard. "There's a security shack there. I used to pass it on my way in when I'd visit Ronan. It's the only way in without raising suspicion." I nodded, my mind racing. Every second felt like a minute. I could hear the sound of voices nearby, low, muffled conversations that sent chills down my spine. There was no telling who was inside, who might be watching, but I didn't have a choice. "Stay close," I said, my voice low. We moved quickly. We crept along the side of the shipyard, staying low, ducking behind crates and machinery, doing our best to avoid detection. The tension in the air was thick, and every time I thought we were safe, I could hear footsteps echoing from a distance, or the scrape of metal on metal that made my heart jump in my throat. We reached the door, and Clara fumbled with the lock for a moment before managing to slide it open. The squeak of the metal was barely audible, but it was enough to make my skin crawl. I motioned for Clara to go first, then followed her inside. The inside of the shack was dimly lit, with a dusty desk and a few old chairs scattered around. A radio hummed softly in the corner, and the sound of someone breathing heavily filled the air. Clara moved quickly to a small cabinet, opening it and pulling out a small black bag. "Keys," she muttered under her breath. "I'll be quick." I nodded, my eyes scanning the room for any signs of movement. It felt like we were in the calm before the storm. There were no guards in sight, but I knew it wouldn't be long before we were spotted. Clara found the keys, her fingers shaking as she grabbed them from the drawer. She glanced at me, her face pale, but nodded. "Let's go." We moved quickly through the back door, and the wind hit me like a slap as we stepped outside again, into the industrial yard. But this time, there was no turning back. Clara's lead was steady as she walked toward a smaller building nearby, and I followed her closely, my eyes darting from one shadow to the next. The building we were heading toward looked nondescript, just another part of the operation. Except I knew better. This was where the worst of it was happening. I could feel it in my gut. "Mark," Clara said, her voice trembling, "this place it's worse than you think. It's not just biowarfare experiments. It's not just parasites. They've been working on something bigger, a weapon." My heart skipped a beat. "Weapon? What the hell are you talking about?" Clara paused, her face ghostly white. "They've been engineering marine life, not just parasites, bigger, stronger, something designed to be used against people. They've been testing it on families, testing it on us." I felt the world tilt under my feet. The weight of her words hit me like a truck, and I had to steady myself against the wall of the building. "Bigger? What the hell does that even mean?" Clara was shaking now, her hand clutching her bag tightly. "I didn't know. I thought I was just helping with the repellents. I thought it was small scale. But when I saw the reports, I realized they weren't just testing parasites. They were using us. They were using people, families, so they could sell this technology to foreign governments, military contracts." I couldn't speak. The thought of my family being used as guinea pigs made my stomach churn. Clara wasn't just an unwitting participant. She had been complicit, a key part of this entire operation. And now, here we were, at the heart of it, in the belly of the beast. Before I could process the full weight of what she had just said, the sound of footsteps echoed from behind us. My body went rigid. "Get down!" I hissed, pulling Clara behind a stack of metal crates. We crouched, holding our breath as the footsteps drew closer. 2 guards appeared, walking along the edge of the building, their weapons slung across their backs. They were talking in low voices, oblivious to our presence. I motioned for Clara to stay still. The guards passed by, their boots echoing on the metal floor as they moved further down the yard. "Move!" I whispered urgently. Clara nodded, and we continued forward, slowly and carefully, until we reached the small entrance to the building. Clara reached for the door, her hand trembling as she twisted the handle. It creaked open, and I was hit with the stench of old oil, mildew, and something worse. Inside, the dim light barely illuminated rows of metal cages, each one containing some kind of marine creature. But these weren't ordinary fish. These creatures had been altered, mutated if anything. I swallowed hard, my stomach turning. The cages held things I couldn't even begin to describe, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark, their bodies twisting in unnatural ways. They were the product of whatever Gray had been creating, and we were standing right in the middle of it. "Clara, what the hell is all this?" I whispered, my voice low with disgust. I don't know," she said, her voice hollow. "These creatures, they've been experimenting with them. They've created something that's more dangerous than any parasite, and it's not just marine life they're using." My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean?" She glanced at me, her eyes full of fear. "They've started using animals. They've started testing on people. Real people." Just as she said that, the sound of a door creaking open echoed through the room. Clara's eyes went wide, her body freezing as the silhouette of a man emerged from the shadows. It was Ronan Gray, and he wasn't alone. "Clara," he said, his voice smooth and cold, "I didn't expect you to come back, and you brought someone with you. How sweet!" I took a step forward, my fists clenching, rage filling every inch of me. "This ends tonight, Gray." Gray smiled, a dark, calculating smile. "Oh, I don't think so, Mark. Not yet. We still have a lot of work to do." And that's when I realized this was bigger than I had ever imagined. The standoff was brief but intense. Gray's smug, calculating smile never wavered as he stood there, his hands casually resting behind his back, surveying Clara and me like we were insects beneath his boot. Behind him, the flickering lights of the shipyard's main building cast long shadows, and the air was thick with the faint hum of machinery. "You really think you can stop me?" Gray asked, his tone almost amused. "You're already too late." Clara and I exchanged a look. Her face was pale, eyes wide with fear. But there was a defiance in her posture now. She wasn't just the woman who had lied to me anymore. She was someone who had realized the magnitude of what they were both involved in, and for the first time, she looked ready to face the consequences. I stepped forward, my body still weak from the venom, but my resolve stronger than ever. I don't care what you think, Gray. This ends here, tonight. Gray raised an eyebrow, then chuckled, almost as though he were humoring me. You think I'm going to just let you waltz in here and undo everything I've worked for? You're too naive, Mark. I clenched my fists, feeling the heat of the adrenaline pushing through my veins, making up for the weakness in my body. This is over, I said, my voice low but steady. You've been using people like animals for your sick experiments, and I'm not going to let you get away with it. He smiled again, this time more darkly. You're wrong, Mark. You're just a pawn in a much bigger game. And now you're a threat to my operation. You're going to regret this. Before I could respond, I heard the sharp sound of boots hitting the concrete. Gray's smirk faded, and his body tensed as two armed guards appeared, stepping out from the shadows. They were positioned in front of us now, blocking the way, their weapons drawn and aimed at Clara and me. I looked at Clara, my heart pounding. She was frozen, staring at the guards, her eyes darting to me as if she were searching for an answer I didn't have. Gray, I said, my voice firm, you're done. These people, you've hurt them long enough. It's over. Gray's eyes flickered to his guards, then back to me, his expression hardening. You don't get it, do you? I'm not the one who's done. I've been working with some very powerful people. The military, governments, they all want what I'm building here. This is bigger than anything you can imagine. And now, because of you, I have to clean up my mess. My blood ran cold at his words, but before I could respond, the sound of sirens cut through the air. A flash of red and blue light reflected off the walls of the shipyard. Gray's eyes narrowed as he turned toward the noise, his expression shifting to one of frustration. No, Gray whispered under his breath. Not now. It's too soon. I turned quickly to see several black SUVs pull into the yard, federal agents spilling out, their guns drawn and ready. Cal stepped out of one of the cars, his face grim as he looked at me. Behind him, several more agents moved in, securing the area, pointing guns at the guards who had been positioned to keep us in check. Gray's expression changed instantly from smug to tense, his back straightening, his hands moving subtly toward his waist. But before he could make a move, one of the agents barked a command. Put your hands where we can see them, Gray. You're under arrest. Gray hesitated for only a moment before he raised his hands, the smile still clinging to his face, though now it was twisted, almost defeated. The guards, realizing they were outmatched, lowered their weapons slowly, dropping them to the floor. Gray, still calm, but with the slightest edge of desperation in his eyes, gave one last look at me. You think this is over? He sneered. You have no idea what you've just walked into. The web I've woven is much bigger than you, Mark. Much bigger than anyone here. You're not getting out of this. I stared at him, my expression hard. I'm getting out of this, Gray. And so is everyone else you've hurt. Cal walked toward me, his steps deliberate, the rest of the federal agents moving in to take Gray and his guards into custody. As he approached, he gave me a brief nod, then turned his attention to Gray. Looks like you've been busy, Cal said, his voice laced with contempt. I think you'll be seeing a lot of new faces in the next few months. Too bad you won't get to enjoy the company. Gray said nothing as the agents cuffed him and his guards, their faces hard as they pushed them toward the awaiting vehicles. I turned to Clara, who was standing motionless beside me. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with something I couldn't quite place. Fear, shame, or maybe a mixture of both. Clara, I said, my voice quieter now. What now? She shook her head, as if she hadn't heard me. Her gaze was fixed on Gray as he was pushed into one of the black SUVs, his face still contorted in anger. I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't know how bad it was. I thought I was just helping. I thought I could fix things. You can't fix this, Clara, I said, my voice sharper than I meant. You put Evan and me in danger. You brought us into this nightmare, and you lied to me, over and over. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for that. She closed her eyes, tears spilling from her cheeks. I'm so sorry, Mark. I was stupid and I was scared. I never wanted to hurt you, but I did. And I don't know how to make it right. I watched her for a moment, torn between the anger that still burned inside me and the part of me that wanted to believe her. The part of me that wanted to think this could somehow be fixed. But deep down, I knew it was too late. The damage had been done. "I don't know if there is a way to make it right," I said finally. "But you have to live with that, Clara. We all do." She nodded silently, wiping her tears away. Behind us, the federal agents were securing the shipyard, rounding up evidence and taking Gray's operations down piece by piece. For the first time in days, I felt like I could finally breathe. It wasn't over, though. This was just the beginning. Gray's empire would fall, but there were others out there, other pieces of the web that needed to be untangled. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but tonight at least I knew one thing for sure. We had won. For now. 6 months had passed since that night at the shipyard. The dust had settled, and the world felt like it had slowly begun to turn again. Gray's entire operation had been dismantled, and the investigation into his illegal biotech projects was now part of a larger, nationwide effort. The federal government had taken down his associates, seized assets, and wiped out his network. For a while, I thought I'd feel some sort of closure, but the truth was, I still didn't know how to feel about everything that had happened. Clara had been cooperative with the authorities, answering questions, giving them everything they needed to bring down Gray's empire. She was still living with the guilt of what she had done, and though I couldn't fully forgive her yet, I could see that she was trying. She had made mistakes, horrible, dangerous mistakes, but she was trying to make amends. As for Evan, he was doing better. The venom had taken a toll on him, but thanks to the quick action of the doctors, the effects had been minimal. He was still a little scared of the ocean, though, and whenever we passed a marina, he would look away, his grip tightening on my hand, but he was getting better every day, and I promised myself that I would do whatever it took to help him heal. It wasn't easy. We all had scars, physical, emotional, but we were surviving, and that, I realized, was enough for now. We were together, and we were safe. A few months later, Clara and I decided to take a small step forward, not for us, not yet, but for Evan. For the sake of giving him something to look forward to. It was early one Saturday morning when I found myself standing on the deck of a boat once again. This time, though, it was different. There was no hidden agenda, no dark secrets, just the promise of a fresh start. The sun was rising, casting a warm glow over the water, and Evan was sitting at the edge of the boat, looking out at the vast open sea. He was quiet, but there was a look in his eyes, curiosity, wonder, that told me he was ready. "You sure about this, buddy?" I asked, crouching next to him. My voice was softer now, gentler, as I placed a hand on his shoulder. He nodded slowly. "I think so. I want to try again." My heart swelled at the sight of him, his small hands gripping the side of the boat, his face turned toward the water. I could see the hesitation in him, but there was something else too. A willingness, an openness. He was ready to take the next step. We'd come a long way since that disastrous sailing trip, and I wasn't sure we'd ever fully heal, but I knew we could try, for Evan, for the future. I glanced over at Clara, who was standing at the helm, looking out at the horizon. She smiled at me, a tentative, hopeful smile. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of the past on my shoulders. The anger, the betrayal, it was still there, but it didn't define me anymore. It didn't define us. "Ready?" Clara asked, her voice breaking through the silence. I nodded. "Yeah, let's go." We set out, the boat cutting through the water, the wind in our hair, and the sun beginning to rise higher in the sky. The ocean was calm today, calmer than it had been the first time we sailed, calmer than I ever thought it could be. The water seemed endless, stretching out before us like a blank canvas, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were exactly where we were supposed to be. Evan leaned over the side of the boat, his eyes wide with excitement as a school of dolphins leapt from the water beside us, their sleek bodies cutting through the waves. He gasped, his face lighting up with joy. "Did you see that, Dad?" he asked, his voice full of wonder. "That was amazing!" I grinned. "I saw it, kiddo. Pretty incredible, huh?" Clara laughed softly, her eyes soft as she looked at Evan. "It's all part of the adventure, right?" Evan nodded, his smile wide. "Yeah, it's perfect." I looked at Clara, and for the first time in months, I saw a sense of peace in her eyes. She had always been the one who kept us together, the one who held us up, even when everything seemed to be falling apart. Now I saw the same strength in her that had made me fall in love with her in the first place. The woman who had once been so driven by fear was now driven by something else: hope, determination. We sailed for hours, moving further out into the open water, away from the memories of everything that had happened. It wasn't about the past anymore. It wasn't about Clara's mistakes or the twisted experiments Gray had orchestrated. It was about the here and now. It was about Evan's laughter, about the gentle rocking of the boat, about the peace that came with being free from the shadows of the past. Later, as we dropped anchor in a small cove, I turned to Clara. She was looking at me, her gaze steady, and I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time: trust. "I'm sorry, Mark," she said, her voice low. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make things right." I didn't have an answer for her. I couldn't promise her forgiveness, not yet. But what I could promise was this: that we would move forward, together. We might not have all the answers, but we would rebuild, one day at a time. "Let's just be here," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Let's just be here with Evan. For him. For us." She nodded, her face softening, and for the first time, I could see that she believed it, that we could move on, that the future was waiting for us if we were ready to embrace it. Evan climbed onto my lap, his small arms wrapping around me as he looked out at the horizon. "Do you think we'll always have days like this, Dad?" he asked, his voice small and hopeful. I squeezed him tightly, my heart full. "I hope so, buddy. I really do." And as I sat there with my family, the sun setting in the distance, I realized that while the past would always be a part of us, it didn't define us. We had a future now, a future that we would build together, no matter what had happened before. And for the first time in months, I felt hopeful. I felt ready. We were starting over, and this time, it was on our terms.